The Australian Football League, with its inaugural season commencing the following year, the VFL, aiming to become a national competition, began expanding beyond Victoria to other Australian states in the 1980s and changed its name to the AFL in 1990. The league currently consists of 18 teams spread over 5 of Australia's 6 states. The team with the best record after the home and away series is awarded the minor premiership. The top 8 teams then play off in a 4-round finals series, culminating in the AFL Grand Final, which is normally held at the Melbourne Cricket Ground each year. The Grand Final winner is termed the Premiers and is awarded the Premiership Cup. The current Premiers are Richmond, who won the 2020 AFL Grand Final in what was the first Grand Final held outside of Victoria, as well as the first played at night. The Victorian Football Association was established in 1877 and quickly went on to become Victoria Football Competition. During the 1890s, an off-field power struggle occurred between the VFA's stronger and weaker clubs, the former seeking greater administrative control commensurate with their relative financial contribution to the game. This came to a head in 1896 when it was proposed that gate profits, which were always lower in matches involving the weaker clubs, be shared equally amongst all teams in the VFA. After it was intimated that the proposal would be put to a vote, 6 of the strongest clubs, Collingwood, Essendon, Fitzroy, Geelong, Melbourne and South Melbourne, seceded from the VFA, and later invited Carlton and St Kilda to join them in founding a new competition, the Victorian Football League. The remaining VFA clubs, Footscray, North Melbourne, Port Melbourne, Richmond and Williamstown, were given the opportunity to compete as junior sides at a level beneath the VFL, but rejected the offer and remained for the 1897 VFA season. The VFL's inaugural season occurred in 1897. It made several innovations early on to entice the public's interest, including an annual finals tournament, rather than awarding the premiership to the team with the best record through the season, and the formal establishment of the modern scoring system, in which 6 points are awarded for a goal, and 1 point for a behind. Although the VFL and the VFA continued to compete for spectator interest for many years, the VFL quickly established itself as the premier competition in Victoria. In 1908, the league expanded to 10 teams, with Richmond crossing from the VFA and University Football Club from the Metropolitan Football Association. University, after 3 promising seasons, finished last each year from 1911 until 1914, including losing 51 matches in a row. This was in part caused by its players' focus on their studies rather than football, particularly during examinations, and it was partly because the club operated on an amateur basis at a time when player payments were becoming common. As a result, the club withdrew from the VFL at the end of 1914. Beginning sporadically during the late 1890s and consistently from 1907 until World War I, the VFL Premier and the Premier of the South Australian Football League met in a playoff match for the Championship of Australia. South Australia's Port Adelaide was the most successful club of the competition, winning 3 titles during the period along with an earlier victory. In 1925, the VFL expanded from 9 teams to 12, with Footscray, Hawthorn and North Melbourne each crossing from the VFA. North Melbourne and Hawthorn remained very weak in the VFL for a very long period, although North Melbourne would become the first of the 1925 expansion sides to reach a grand final. In 1950, initially it was Footscray that adapted to the VFL with the most ease of the 3 clubs, and by 1928 were well off the bottom of the ladder. Between the years of 1927 and 1930, Collingwood became the first and only VFL team to win 4 successive premierships. In 1952, the VFL hosted a National Day, when all 6 matches were played outside Melbourne. Matches were played at the Sydney Cricket Ground, Brisbane Exhibition Ground, North Hobart Oval, Albury Sports Ground and Victorian country towns Yallourn and Euroa. Footscray became the first of the 1925 expansion teams to win the Premiership in 1954. Melbourne became a powerhouse during the 1950s and early 1960s under coach Norm Smith and star player Ron Burrus. The club contested 7 consecutive grand finals from 1954 to 1960, winning 5 premierships, including 3 in a row from 1955 to 1957. Television coverage commenced in 1957 with direct telecasts of the final quarter permitted. At first, several channels competed through broadcasting different games. When the VFL found that television reduced crowds, it decided no coverage was to be allowed for 1960. In 1961, television replays in Melbourne were introduced, although direct telecasts were rarely permitted. Other states and territories enjoyed live